Welcome to the SIG Cloud Provider office hours for Wednesday, September 10th, 2025, a date that definitely exists and is not our imagination. Um, don't know how it got this late in the year, but here we are. Lots of excitement today, a few agenda items. I will drop a link to the notes in the chat, and if anybody wants to add anything, feel free. Raise hands if you like as well. Okay. Let's see. Let's I feel like everything is always in a different order than expected, but do we want to start with sub-project updates? We could we could start with sub-project and probably circle back and come back to sub-project as well. Um, I dropped that agenda item in for the Crow sub-project, though I'm happy to have anyone else who's joined from Crow speak to it. We did hear an exciting update. If you click that link, you'll see that we did hear back from the Kubernetes org admins. And as expected, they do want us to make it through the checklist of items that we knew was coming. I always never sure because you see it happen in different order. So I'm never sure exactly which order it'll be required in. And the answer is we have a bunch of checklist items to finish before the org moves into Kubernetes 6 or before the repo moves into Kubernetes 6. But that's progress. So, any other sub-project updates before we jump into like just Crow topics in general? We can put those in the agenda, but anything else from Crow maintainers about sub-project update? High level, high level
So
rants?
I believe there is a Crow meeting that will be coming soon. One thing that will be of interest for those who are the next big Crow feature is going to be what's called versioning, which is really about how when you make a CRD and controller change to roll it out across the cluster. And I believe one of the other Crow maintainers who I don't see in the room with us today actually has a design doc that is going to be shared today, I believe. So we can probably try to get it in here as well. But for those who are interested, there will be a design doc for versioning.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Walter. Good to hear. Um, And yeah, I imagine that as we finish the repo migration, we'll finish a bunch of other tasks, including moving the Chrome meeting into the SIG Cloud Provider meeting links and that sort of thing. And thank you, Jesse. Jesse in the chat saying that Barney has a doc out for that. So somebody can probably add a link to the doc. Okay, fantastic. Um, any other sub projects? I'm looking at Walter just in case he has other sub project updates.
So the API server, we've done a few changes recently, mostly for using HTTP Connect mode. And we're expecting a new release to go out shortly. We'll need that both for, I think Microsoft uses HTTP Connect mode. So we'll have a release out for Microsoft and anyone else using that mode. And in general, we should have a new release out for 135. So as soon as I can make a little more time, we'll get those releases out.
135 development has just started. You're very ambitious.
Sorry, 134.
Okay, I
Too
was thinking,
many,
might be
too
high.
too much planning, not enough state left in my brain.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we are all looking ahead to 135 for sure. Okay, fantastic. Any other sub-project update stuff before we hop into our agenda topics? All right, Almiko, the floor is yours. Let's talk about deprecation.
Hey, I guess I just realized, I probably should have put this in the sub-project updates. But yeah, I sent the email. It's not very interesting or exciting, but it just talks about what we said we were going to do. And I also I don't know why I put an auto scaler issue there. That sounds weird, but all right. Did I? Sorry, I'm like confused. I put the wrong. All right.
Oh, did you include a link that was a different one than the one you
I
wanted?
did, yeah. I included the
But
proper link to this,
us.
but I
Oh,
got somehow I got this in there for which for
oh,
something else. I don't know why that got plopped in there. But anyways, so we put the deprecation announcement out. Also, I wanted to give a shout out to user DevOps by accident, who I think is in here, Abdul Rahman. Reached out to me on Slack about wanting to get more involved in the SIG, and it was coincidentally at the time that we needed to do a lot of work to kind of fix up the Equinix Metal repo. Not a lot of work, but there were some dependency and linter issues we wanted to fix so that the CI was working properly and we could just kind of approve the dependency bumps that are happening. And then Abdurrahman also updated it to Kubernetes 1.34 as well. So really great help there from the community, and it puts us in a position where I think we're almost ready to kind of freeze that repo and just say, okay, we're just going to let this thing coast into the sunlight unless there's any sort of CVEs that come up or whatnot. So yeah, that was a really cool big success, and thanks again to DevOps by accident. I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Abdul Rahman.
yeah, Abdurrahman, if you want to add anything or say hi, introduce yourself, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think I don't know what to say. I'm just short of words. So I'm Abdurrahman. And so I think I reached out to um, Joel about my interest in the SIG group for cloud provider, and he gave me some guidance and told me about some issue that he's currently working on if I would like to join in, and yeah, that got my interest, and I volunteered to help solve some of those issues, and it's a privilege for me and it's an honor, and I'm also looking forward to support the community further, and also um contribute more than this in the future.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
awesome.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
very
Yeah, it's great work, Abdul Rahman. Thank you, and absolutely, if there's more stuff that comes up, I'll definitely stay in touch with you and try to get you more hooked in here to what things that are going on.
Thank you.
Uh, okay, so if there's no other questions about that, the next topic, I just wanted to kind of call out that, a couple months ago, maybe 2, 3 months ago, we started talking about, wanting to widen the the owners files and get more collaboration happening in some of the SIG owned cloud provider repos and everything. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the AWS and GCP maintainers. I think I saw Kirthan come in here. Like, thank you so much for what you've been doing upstream, Kirthan. I know like we had talked about wanting to start making some changes on the AWS cloud provider and kind of bring some bug fixes and features and whatnot there. And I'm really happy to see it's happening the way we kind of expected it. There's good collaboration happening in the upstream, reviews going back and forth, good discussions happening. And I'm starting to see the same thing on the GCP cloud provider as well. And I'm kind of excited to see the next generation of things where we get to the point where all these things are being easier to build and things are kind of coming together. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of take a moment and celebrate what I see as a success for this SIG, because it's something we've talked about this year, and it's really cool to see us executing on it and kind of making some progress and everything. So thank you to everyone who's been involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If any of our AWS or GCP people on the call want to give us their thoughts or insights on this, I see Walter has his hand up.
I'm going to go less thoughts, more call to action. I mean, I agree with what El Miko said. I think we need to be, leading though. It's great that various individual heroes, and I use that term deliberately, have been trying to step up and make the right thing happen. But I think we as a SIG need to kind of indicate where we need to be. and you've all heard this from me before, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop the same call to action, which is I think we need to decide what a standard deployment that we want to test looks like. I think it probably should be, you know, um, a HADR style deployment, preferably with three control plane components. So 3 Kube API servers, 3 etcds, that sort of thing. We should have the appropriate load balancers in place. And we should try to standardize on the tooling that can bring those up. And I think, you know, doing that then sets us up to be successful on what I think Elmico's trying to get to, which is having the ability to run all of the tests that we had to disable as part of the cloud provider extraction. And you know, and I think it also helps the community. I mean, if we're like saying this is a best practice cluster of a certain variety and it passes all the tests, I think that is then somewhere that, you know, anyone who wants to come in and go, I want to know how to bring up the same kind of cluster no matter which cloud provider I'm on, you know, that has real value in my opinion.
I have a question. How, in your mind, does that differ from some style of test conformance? Or are you describing what you believe to be test conformance?
I think there's a subtlety here. I think this is not so much, I mean, it's going to lead to test conformance, but I think what I'm talking about is making sure that the test bed is correct, you know, and I think, you know, we've got to get the test bed right before we can get the test conformance right. And so right now, I think what we're trying to look at is say, we own each of these cloud provider repos, and we would like there to be a standard way to bring the test bed up that we can then run the tests on. And that the test bed should be apples to apples everywhere so that, you know, among other things, even other SIGs like SIG Node, when they're running a test, can say, okay, you know, how many etcds are there? How many API servers? How many, right? As much as possible, I think we should be decreeing a standardized platform that we test on.
Okay, yeah. What do you think is the next step we should take?
I mean, I think it is literally saying we sit down and say, okay, you know, we should be able to bring up, you know, this is what a standard test bed at Kubernetes cluster should look like. It should have, I mean, and this is my suggestion would be, you know, we can get into the nodes as well, but it's like it should come up with 3 etcds, you know, with or you know, RAF 3. We should be bringing up 3 Kubernetes API servers. There should be a KCM and a CCM on, you know, each of the nodes that's running the Kube API server. There should be a scheduler on each of these. They should be running with leader. I mean, I know it's very nuts and bolts, but I think that that's where we should go. I think both CAPI and COPS tried to do that. I think, I mean, I will say right now, I think there's a CAPI bug that prevents that from working on GCP. So we, you know, I'm going to advocate in the short term we do COPS, but I actually like the idea of making both COPS and CAPI do that the same way on each of the cloud providers. And I see that Elmico has his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, like, I love this topic. And I think that, you know, kind of to Bridget's notion of like what's next and whatnot. Because I know, like, I have a bunch of colleagues here at Red Hat who are really interested in testing and improving CCM testing and whatnot. And just, you know, getting into the more general questions, I think that Walter is getting into here would be awesome. I'm wondering, should we maybe form a working group with the purpose of having its output be whatever our kind of opinion is on what this, you know, standard should be? And then, you know, once the working group has kind of completed, we can say, okay, we've got an action plan. this is what we're going to work towards now.
I have a subtle suggestion on that one, Elmiko.
Yeah.
Having one of my other hats, we spent a bunch of time trying to get a working group going. Sub projects are much cheaper than working groups, and I don't think we necessarily want to wait. I would say let's get a sub project going so that we don't lose momentum. And then in parallel with doing the work, we can try to turn it into a working group, but I don't want to necessarily wait for the working group to be formed to get started on this effort.
Right. I'm just thinking about like what I would like to do is organize a way that we could, that I can help include some other people who I know are like interested in this, and they could come and kind of share their thoughts and everything. And I'm just working group, kind of just popped into my head because I was like, well, that would give us like we could just kind of organize a regular time to meet and kind of achieve this goal of like let's write down our opinion. Let's write down this standard.
100%. And I think actually working group is the right answer. I just don't want to wait for it to form to get going on the work. So my thought is start the sub project, get started on the work, and then petition to have the working, because the SIG can create a sub project, but it takes higher level guidance to create a working group.
Right. We don't I don't even necessarily think that we need a working group per se, but yeah, like I just want us to acknowledge it as a SIG, as like, okay, we're doing this thing, we're going to meet on these days for the next, month or whatever until we get this thing hammered out, That's more what I was looking for.
I mean, that sounds good, and I have a couple of other people to call on, but I do want to point out we do have this meeting. I know I'm going to miss the one in 2 weeks, but perhaps we could just commit to the people involved in this effort will bring their ideas to the one in 2 weeks and hammer some stuff out. I mean, we don't have to even build a new structure to, do some work. But I want to throw it to Jesse, and then I also want to call on Justin after that because he had some cogent comments in the chat. But Jesse first.
Oh, I was just gonna quote Justin's cogent comments. I agree. So I think the question for the SIG right now is to think about what you want as an output artifact. If the output artifact is guidance, working group sounds great. If the output is the actual test stand, if it's an implementation, to Justin's cogent observation, you'd want to be able to own that code somewhere, which would have to be a sub-project. Could be a combination, could be both. The only thing I would warn against is having a working group that just sort of lingers, which I don't hear in anybody's intent here, but it's always a risk with a working group. Is like, sure, like we missed this one, we'll come to the next one. We're meeting bi-weekly, now a month has gone by. So it's like, yeah, if you kind of want to hit the ground running and you think the output should be a working implementation, maybe a sub-project is right. I will also just, because I have the mic, I will say anybody from AWS obviously here is interested. I'd love to be part of this sub-project from the EKS service team. I'd be happy to be part of that.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you, Jesse. And then I want to also have Justin take the mic for a minute and tell us, because I know he has a bunch of experience with working groups versus sub-projects.
Thank you. I mean, I don't have a ton to add. I do think I share Walter's concern around like a working group having more administrative process involved. I think that's because a working group is intended to be multi-sig, right? Like, I think there's another question, which is like, hey, like, what's the boundary between this and SIG cluster lifecycle? As someone that is a lead of SIG cluster lifecycle, I'm not too worried about it. I think we can all be sort of grown-ups about it. Yeah, like if I think if we're proposing a brand new like cluster lifecycle management system, then we should probably talk to SIG cluster lifecycle. But if we're doing something more like tightly scoped, then I think it's totally fine. And I think it would actually benefit everyone, including SIG cluster lifecycle, to actually have some clearer guidance in the various cloud providers how we expect to bring these things up and run them, and for cloud provider GCP, for example, to test against said configuration, which I don't think we have the cleanest track record of, and we are trying to improve that. I think it sounds great, and I think if it may in future be a working group as well, and let's just get going as quickly as we can. And we can probably also put stuff initially into the cloud provider, GCP, cloud provider, AWS, et cetera, repos. And I guess they're cloud provider generic repo, right? So we do have repos to put these things in, and we can sort of see what evolves and whether we think it should be extracted in some logical way.
Awesome, thank you. And then to you, Almiko.
Yeah. Yeah, like I totally agree with what, Jesse and Justin are saying here. Like, I think that's, it makes good sense. Yeah, like for me, listening, I think one of the details that I want to make sure we get really clear here, and I think it's a nuance, that, we've certainly talked about in this meeting before, which is like, yeah, like I don't want us to create a new cluster lifecycle management system. Like, I don't think we need that at all. Like, I think at some level, what we're talking about, there's two things. There's the notion of having better testing and more generic testing, and then there's the notion of like, how do we create the test bed for those tests to work? And in order to get to a place where we have like this generic testing, that we've been talking about at KubeCons for the last like 2 years, is we need to have a way to be able to say, okay, is there an easy way in the test infrastructure to say, spin me an AWS, distro, spin me a GCP distro, spin me this, and then without designing a new system for that, allowing it to plug into things like COPS or like Cluster API, so that we can just have like a nice test bed that says, okay, we're reusing parts of Kubernetes to deploy Kubernetes. Really, when the test starts, you're just saying, which flavor do I want, or which distro do I want to bundle, and then that'll or deploy, and then that'll deploy it. I hope that doesn't mean we're designing a new lifecycle management system, but like, yeah, I think maybe understanding from the experts if there's already like a way for this to plug in, that would be important. But I think doing that work first, it is important. Like getting to the point where we say, okay, now we've got an easy way to remix whatever test bed we want. Then it becomes really easy to layer the tests on top of it. Go ahead, Walter.
I'm going to mostly +1 that. I will also say that I spent a little bit of time at London chatting with the COPS developers. And one of the problems I described, which I think is one of the ones kind of to what you're saying, Almiko, that we're going to need to do is say, as part of our testing in the cloud provider, since the CCM bits need to get built out of the local repo, but we want to pull the standard bits out of KK, we need to bring up this sort of hybrid cluster that is, known good Kubernetes bits along with the locally built head versions of the cloud provider bits, and then bring a cluster up that is that hybrid. And so I described that to the COPS maintainers. I don't think the CAPI maintainers are going to give us a different answer and said, hey, I want this problem solved. And their thing is, oh, we'd love to solve that for you. So, I mean, I think they are absolutely willing. And it kind of goes back to what you're saying, Almiko. Like, I don't want to worry about putting the bits together and doing the deployment. There are people who want to solve that problem. Let's let them, let's just give them guidance on what that solution, what we need from them, what the final solution should look like.
Right. We just want to consume it.
Yeah, makes sense. Justin, I think you had a hand up for a minute if you wanted to add anything there.
I just wanted to as a COPS maintainer, I'm not going to claim that COPS is perfect in any way. I think there's plenty of room for improvement on all the tools in terms of, being able to describe in a more declarative, non-codey way, like what a cluster is. And we just have never really documented. We've never really produced an artifact that is like consumable in many ways. And I think that there are things we can do in KOps to make that more true. I think there's things we can do in kubeadm. There's things we can do in Cluster API to make that more true. And hopefully we can sort of all run in that direction and, define what that artifact, what the contents of that artifact are. And like, then KOps can figure out how to consume it, and Cluster API can figure out how to consume it, all those things, right? So I think it's a good direction. And I think, yes, we are, at least on the KOps project, we're excited about it.
Yeah, I think like just not, just to kind of butt in here again, like I think you hit on something there that really to me is kind of what this is. Like, yeah, like we don't necessarily want to have to design this whole architecture that kind of fits these things in and everything. Like if we can, and this goes to the notion of what Walter was talking about, and maybe whatever this sub project or working group or whatever thing turns out being, like, can we get together and just say, here's what we need, right? We need to be able to say, I want this platform, I want this thing, and that's what I want, right? And then yeah, go to the COPS developers, go to the cluster API developers, go to whoever and say, hey, look, here's what we're looking for. Is there like just an easy way for us to go from what we want to what you provide? And then yeah, how do we kind of knit that all together? And that'll give us, what we need basically, which is basically just to say, okay, I want an AWS cluster. I need you to build from KK. I need you also to build from K/Cloud Provider AWS, and bada bing, bada boom. I've got a test platform somehow, right?
I'll quickly mention, by the way, one of the things that made it hard in the past is like value propagation amongst the various components. And ironically, or perhaps you will have genius insight, Crow actually could be a great solution for that. That is like, so like bang, a solution arrives. It's like, perfect, yes. But let's see let's not put the cart before the horse. Type thing.
I look, don't think that I didn't give an internal presentation at Red Hat where I talked about, mixing cluster API with Crow for like, multi-cluster management or whatnot. Don't think I didn't do that.
Ugh, fantastic. All right, we're starting to pull a lot of these pieces together. All right, anything else on this topic? I always love when Walter gives us a call to action that includes, the word test, because that leads to great conversation. All right. Couple of other items that I added to the agenda just for us to note. I wanted to remind everybody that Kubernetes steering election is now open, and it's going to be open for a good long while. That link actually kind of will take you through and have you auth. Just click the sign in with GitHub if you're already signed in on GitHub on this place, and you can see, great example. As you can see, the election is currently running and you are an eligible voter. And it tells you that you haven't yet voted and that voting starts at this date and ends at that date. That isn't anywhere on Earth. So just be aware that like most people are going to probably be looking at October 24th, not October 25th, early in the morning UTC. Anyway, so like if you're thinking, okay, that seems great, but it says I'm not eligible. That is how to apply for an exception. If you believe that your work actually does make you eligible, it is possible to get voter exceptions. So you have plenty of time for that, but I want to put that on everyone's radar to make sure that anyone who is participating and feels like they should be able to vote can put in for their voter exception. And then oh, sorry, on that same link, sorry, the one that says apply for an exception. If you scroll all the way up on that link, that is all the information about what goes on with the election, what it's for. It will have links to who's running, etc. So, yeah. Anything else people want to find out about or talk about in terms of the Kubernetes election and steering? All right. Just want to let everybody know about that. And then I do know that I owe a draft of getting us started for our plan for KubeCon. And I will work on that. I will miss the meeting in 2 weeks, but before that, I'll put a draft out. And that's all I got.
Cool. Thank you.
But I bet other people might have a few things. Perhaps I know that we just kind of talked about Crow and the sub-project update, but do we have any more Crow agenda items from Walter told us a little bit about the big stuff that's coming, but we have other Crow maintainers here. So anyone have anything they want to tell us, including Walter?
I guess one other thing that may be an interesting topic, I will just mention it. I don't think we're quite ready to have the chat today because I think this group needs to come up to speed maybe. Crow's still not at its first stable release, right? I mean, I know there are a lot of people who are using it, but we're still internally discussing when we want to consider ourselves to be stable. I will also mention that stable is different than 1.0. So stable is just when, the crow maintainers don't panic when you use the word crow in production in the same sentence. So that's, we have certain things like versioning that we think should be involved in that. We also think that once we say stable, we're going to want to be a lot more careful about backward compatibility and API churn. So we kind of want to get past those. So I think that is an ongoing discussion, and I'm somewhat relying on Bridget and Jesse to keep me honest in this.
I like how you wait for Jesse to drop before you start volunteering him for things. That's great. We'll have to let him know. Yeah, definitely worth discussing. And I think you're right. I think we're not there yet, but if we determine, I would say absolute bare minimum for stable would be you're not making such huge changes to the API that people would not be able to do an upgrade. I would say is pretty basic. Like if we're making major changes to the API, we cannot call it stable because then people can't keep a cluster running with it. But that's like bottom rung of the ladder. There's probably more. Because as we all know, people love to launch things and then keep those things afloat and keep using them and keep changing them and keep ship of Theseusing them. And that we know that will happen, even if we think it's terrifying. So we should be ready. All right. We are at the end of our written agenda. Should we take a look at our open issues, see if we have anything we need to triage? You are muted, Elmiko.
Yeah, it looks like not. It looks like we just have this one, which I guess since we have some GCP folks here, I think we're still waiting. This needs some attention from a GCP expert. There's some problem happening with this test that has direct relation and looked like to something related to the Google Image Registry, perhaps. But I didn't know enough to dig deeper. So I pinged Walter and Justin here. I don't know who would be the most appropriate person to take a look, but I think we had thought the signal on this test started to get better, but then Raja Lakshmi kind of brought up another point, or Barney brought up another point, that it seemed like it was still happening. So probably just need someone to take a look at it. Yeah, I mean, the frequency is not as bad as it was, but it was, this like each node by ordering unclean reboot and ensure they function upon restart. Like I started to look at the failures and I couldn't really tell what was going on.
Does one of our GCP people want to take a look at this in the next couple of weeks?
Sorry, I'm just going to 132815.
Yes.
All right. I will try to find someone to look at it.
Yeah, let's say Walter and I will figure it out who should look at it.
Awesome.
Cool.
It's
Yeah, I mean,
opportunity to bring in someone new as it were, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, I don't think it's necessarily an overly complicated problem. It just went beyond the edge of my knowledge in terms of like how GCP and the infrastructure are configured. So, yeah, great opportunity for someone to get in and start debugging this stuff though.
Well, if you say it's reaching the limits of your knowledge, that's probably well beyond ours as well. So maybe it's not a great starter project, but we will at least take a look. Thank you.
That's very kind of you to say so, Justin. But yeah, no, like in this respect, my knowledge did not have a very long runway.
Right. And should we take a look at test grid?
Yeah, see how this is looking. If it populates.
Interesting. Is it low? It says loading.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Some of these test grids take a while to load. I would suggest let's go to the next bug, let this load in the background, and we can come back. Oh,
Hey, there we go.
There was I don't think there was a next bug to look at, unfortunately, or fortunately.
Oh, I thought there was a network proxy bug next, which is why I was.
Well, we may as well, even if it's an old one, we may as well go look at
Yeah.
it.
Did I pass over that too quickly?
I think it might have been an older one, but we could still look.
Oh, this.
I mean, it's from last summer, but
It still needs triage, so you know.
what do we think?
Do-
Why did we?
doesn't
Oh,
Imran
it's
come
okay.
from-
If it's
Yeah.
on, okay. Imran and I meet every week. So
Right, I was going to say, doesn't Imran go to this?
yeah, let me just follow up with Imran, and I'll find out, because I can't believe that if there's something that's been
It looks
hung for a year,
yeah,
and Imran hasn't harassed me.
last year, and now the robot is angry.
Yeah, I'll follow up. Then I should be meeting with Imran soon, so I'll follow up with Imran.
Cool. I was going to say, this is another Google centric.
Hey, Imran's Microsoft.
Oh, okay, sorry. Fair enough.
It's a rich.
All right, yeah, I think that was it though. Like that was the other one. I think the other stuff's even older than that. So like that, I guess and the other question too, did you want to accept triage on this, Walter?
Yeah, let's go ahead and accept triage, and then I'll.
Well, we we accepted it and it got bumped off at some point.
Yeah, I think it happens when it gets when the bot gets angry because it's been more than a year.
Totally. Although I think this one, I feel like this is one we should, this is one of those we should either probably like decide to go deeper on this or not. I don't know if we want to keep this. We can keep it open, but this is the notion of supporting multiple CCMs in the same cluster. I don't even. I always go back and forth on whether this is like an idea that should happen or should never happen.
An interesting question. Yeah.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you, Walter. I can't answer. I mean, I can't answer on the spot whether or not we should even.
No, this is like a philosophical question, right? All right, but yeah, that's it. Other stuff's looking pretty good and everything.
Just on that last point, Amika, I think one of the things, there's also like halfway positions. So for example, one of the things that I've messed around with is like, it would be cool to run it's quite difficult to run like a control plane, specifically etcd, on my machines at my house. But I would love to be able to bring those nodes into like a control plane that is running on a cloud.
Yeah.
Right. But then I don't want the cloud controller manager to start trying to nuke those machines or whatever it is, because it can't find them. So like basically like know what's in scope type thing. But you can also get around that by simply not running a cloud controller manager. So
right. I think the thing that had come up during discussion of this one, because like, yeah, we had discussed this in the past, and I'm kind of eternally curious about this because I think there should be a way to do it. I just don't know. I haven't quite figured out how yet. Or we haven't figured out. But I think part of the notion here is like, yeah, it's one thing if I want to run my control plane on some sort of public infrastructure where I've got a cloud controller running, and then I've got this other set of instances that are somewhere on the internet that I control, and I'd like to attach them as workers, right? Maybe because I own the hardware, or it's something special, or whatever, who knows why. Like that definitely sounds much more doable. But I think part of the things come up in discussion here is like, well, can I have half my cluster on AWS and the other half on GCP? Or like, can I spread my cluster across like Azure, AWS, and GCP? And then, that starts to get into all these questions of like, okay, well, are you using like VPCs on any of these clouds? Like, how does the networking interact with each other? There was like all these deeper questions about how we start to make sure the cluster can keep these things organized. And I think it's possible to solve it, but like we haven't had a user come forward with a case yet where it's like, I need this today, and like it has to be done. So like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point.
Yeah, I think my point was if we did like we could tackle the one piece, which is like, I have a cluster running on AWS. I have some machines at my house that have cool GPUs in them, and they're much cheaper to run. So I would like to add those to my cluster type thing, right? And please don't try to nuke my physical machines. That would make me mad. Like if we just supported that in Cloud Control Manager, I think that's a great first step. And yes, networking is up to me, like out of scope, right? It's not necessarily a Cloud Controller Manager problem, right? Like we're not trying to solve the whole problem, everything. We're just trying to be like, we will at least not do the wrong thing in Cloud Controller Manager. Like recognize that the machine or cloud provider ID, I can't remember the field exactly, on the node is not a AWS or GCP one, and therefore I will not mess with it type thing.
Yeah, like I mean, like getting back into this discussion, like it kind of like unlocks all these memories in my mind about like, yeah, there's all these ways you can kind of like slice these things into. And I think at some level, yeah, just having like the node lifecycle controller, like not nuking machines that it doesn't recognize, that's like the bare minimum, right? And maybe that's all we need at some level. Like for me, where my mind starts to get really confused is when we start to get into the topic of like services and whatnot, right? So it's like if I'm making a load balancer style service, and I were in this hybrid scenario where I have like 3 different, cloud controllers running, or even just 2 different cloud controllers running, then like, yeah, how do I like we'd have to add some layer to the service API where I could now specify which cloud is this supposed to go to or something like, or God forbid we use like, annotations or something to say, okay, this is how we're going to specify which service, which load balancer, which cloud is actually going to create the, anyways, that part of it gets kind of wild in my mind.
I was just looking because I feel like this is a discussion that we had in SIG Network like 2 years ago. I feel like it comes up from time to time, and it is usually. I was also just looking at the new, like the recently launched or relaunched SIG multi-cluster charter to see if it looked like this was in there, but I feel like the cross-cloud multi-cluster is kind of a different topic that I'm not 100% sure if it's currently in scope for anyone's work streams. Though it definitely has come up from time to time.
Yeah, I mean, the networking part of this is like easily like I think the most difficult part. But like now that we're talking about it again, like yeah, maybe there's a way to make the node lifecycle part of this a little bit better so that people could, like Justin was saying, kind of get a halfway, right? Like you can get some of the way there. At least your cluster won't get destroyed by like a rogue cloud provider now or something.
I mean, at the end of the day, it can't succeed in deleting my home machine, thankfully, right? Because it's so it won't actually do anything, but it just is inelegant, as it were.
Yeah, good point though. Thank you for bringing it up.
It sort of has some overlap with how virtual kubelet works too. If that were extended to be like multi-cloud, multi-cluster. Anyway.
It's a cool topic, I'm still waiting to see like the users get really excited about it. Like that, like it's an interesting topic. And when you start talking about it, people are like, oh yeah, it's cool. That sounds good. But then when you start to talk about to users, it's like finding the users who actually want to do this. It's like they seem farther and fewer between.
They're probably like, how do our chargebacks work inside our organization for this? Oh, yeah, logistics. Okay, do we have anything else we should talk about today? Open floor if anybody wants to add anything. All right, it looks like we may have talked our way through a great deal of stuff. If you would like to add yourself to the agenda, if you're not currently listed as being present here and you would like to add yourself, I will put the link once again in the notes or in the chat. So feel free to go add yourself to the list of attending, say where you're from, etc. And if there's anything else that people want to chat about, be sure to put it in the Slack or in the topics for next time. I think Almiko has, if you scroll up at the top, kind of a topics for next meeting. Feel free to add or suggest anything there as well. All right. I think that's all we got. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks. Later, everybody.